a housewife, feeding and cleaning her baby, an at-home nurse, tending to a long-time cancer patient, a maid, cleaning and cooking for a family of four. All of these are examples of labor, specifically known as care work.
According to the International Labor Organization, the care work exists in something called the care economy. This includes paid formal care work and services such as teaching, nursing, and caretaker agencies. This is a market that is considered productive in an economy and is definitely accounted for in a country's GDP.
However, a significant amount of care work does not come with a wage. The work of housewives and stay-at-home moms are also considered labor, except they seem to be considered unproductive in an economy because of the said lack of payment.
There is an issue with this. Based on what constitutes an economic activity, which is defined as the process that, based on inputs, leads to the manufacture of a good or provision of a service, we can see that the work of unpaid carers should technically be accounted for in the GDP.
In the economic institution, where one of its manifest functions is to properly distribute jobs, this lacking recognition of informal unpaid care work, which is still work in a country's GDP, constitutes a flawed distribution of labor in a nation.
It brings forth a flawed distribution of labor, causing a faulty distribution of wealth and incorrect consideration of what constitutes economic growth.
This may actually harm the economy and other institutions. More importantly, it hurts the welfare of the unpaid workers themselves, especially those who are women.
Let's look into this issue deeper as we venture into the facts and impacts of the care economy.
According to the ILO, the problem came about due to the rising demand for care work as populations and lifespans increased exponentially. With this, development and labor organizations are beginning to realize the value of care work, especially for women who do work without compensation.
In some countries with socialist economies, the government recognizes that monetary compensation for unpaid care workers, specifically housewives, are important.
The Philippines is in a similar situation. We realize the worth of unpaid care work and have begun taking steps towards giving monetary compensation for housewives.
Alongside this, in 2019, Representative Joey Salcedo filed the House Bill 80 or Housewife Compensation Act, which was drawn up for housewives in poverty who will be given a monthly allowance of 2,000 pesos.
Another push for the emergence of this issue is the need to recognize the unpaid care work that women do. Sheila Marcelo, the CEO of Care.com, claims that the traditional role of women to stay at home and care for children is what limits their participation in the workplace. She also says that women opt not to work because there aren't enough policies to protect them.
This shows that a carer's service is a vital contribution to society, and the depletion of care services offered by the economy is due to the lack of protection and paid compensation for women.
UN Women and Business Fights Poverty are organizations that call for the recognition of women's unpaid work because they carry at least 2.5 times the work.
Unfortunately, even if this type of work subsidizes the cost of care that sustains families, supports economism, and often fills in for the lack of social services, it is not regarded as work worth compensating. Unpaid care and domestic work is valued to be 10% of 39% of the GDP and can contribute more to the economy if formally recognized.
So why is not paying care workers socially accepted? It is because care work is a socially expected and a culturally defined role that a woman must take care of her family and her work, which has no connection to the economy.
As what Bayudan Dagoygoy said, women's contribution to society does not have to be in the labor market since mothers are vital in instilling the value of learning and are considered essential partners of educational institutions in realizing and reinforcing learning outcomes.
Despite these contrasting arguments, efforts to include the care economy into national accounts have been taken in many societies, with developed countries trying to account for a more accurate GDP that encapsulates all types of work, and developing countries focusing on more pressing issues of misallocation of resources due to the informal work's lack of recognition.
An example for developed nations, a national integrated care system, was a program that was created in order to establish, for the care system, the development of services and a regulatory legislative framework. One of the first to try this was Uruguay in 2015.
Other economies attempted varying solutions to the issue of the care economy's largely unpaid labor, yet the problem remains. Many economies make use of time-use surveys to estimate the occurrence of unpaid care work.
Going back to the Philippine setting in 2019, Abrigo and Francisco Abrigo researched about the value of women's and men's work in the Philippines. They used the National Transfer Account and the National Time Transfer Account frameworks. In their research, they found that there is an undeniable gap in the economic participation of women when unpaid care work is unaccounted for in the GDP. Apparently, women spend more time on their work compared to men, and so whether their work be at home or in the market, it is valuable work. An interesting note is that women find it difficult to leave their homes and find a job when there will be no one at home to do the household work.
In statistics from 2006 from the canton of Basel, we can see that in Switzerland, the total amount of unpaid work was 204.4 hours, which amounted to 5,000 679.9 CHF. Indian women spend around 35 hours on average per week on homemaking activities, which is in stark contrast to the 4 hours per week that Indian men do.
Through the lens of the Filipino culture, every member of the household is expected to participate in housework. The gap between women and men's participation in care work is not as large as other nations. Still, the overall participation of women in the Philippine workforce is lacking in accuracy due to the informal nature of their work.
The concern in unpaid care work varies from developed countries. The issue lies mainly in whether unpaid care should be formally recognized as part of the economy because the line between parental and compensated work is still unclear.
Developing nations, the issue lies in the incorrect distribution of jobs in the economy, as they are more focused on economic growth. This makes unpaid care work the least of their concerns.
Now, the issue of not fully recognizing the value of care economy has a significant impact on the different institutions.
This faulty distribution of wealth leads to a fragile economy. There is also an unjust circulation of money because unpaid care workers are not included in the cycle even if they contribute to it. The exclusive harm of this implication is that because the economy is not paying care workers well, less women are opting into having families of their own.
The rise of this issue pushes the government to reform their function to institutionalize new norms as an attempt to solve the care economy's recognition in the economy. Since unpaid care work has no formal regulations, the standards for boundaries and the ability to afford goods and services are not clearly defined. This creates more reason to establish new laws or protection systems as an attempt to ensure the carer's safety.
The familial institution, it would affect the structure of the family given how the roles are culturally defined.
A positive effect informal care has on this institution is lots of children are given access to holistic care that aid in their academic endeavors. Thus, students are better prepared to enter the workforce given that they are helped by both their school and likely their mother at home who plays a role of a tutor.
Overall, not granting pay for unpaid care workers stifles achieving the common good, because the well-being of other people is had at the expense of unpaid care workers. This issue bars a unified fulfillment on 3 levels: personal, economic, and institutional.
On a personal level, unpaid care workers are usually developed and fulfilled emotionally, not financially, which means they have to take other jobs to get money or to rely on the salary of their spouses.
Economically, the common good is not achieved because once the economy is fragile, so is the livelihood of an entire country. Another angle of this implication is how unpaid care workers benefit the economy by providing services of well-being, without the economy considering this service as a valid contribution. These people are treated merely as a means to an end.
On an institutional perspective, institutions do not recognize the economic value of their work due to their roles being deeply integrated into society as completely familiar.
In order to achieve the common good, unpaid workers must be justly compensated in order to help them gain financial stability as each person deserves it.